Coming up on Arirang News, President Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden met on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C., where they reaffirmed their commitments to counter North Korea's nuclear threats by agreeing on integrated nuclear deterrence for the peninsula. President Yoon is now heading back home. Japan has repeated its false territorial claims that South Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island is its own territory in its latest defense white paper. At the same time, though, Tokyo called Seoul its partner. Marking the first North Korean Defectors Day falling on this Sunday, July 14th, Arirang News has special coverage that sheds light on North Korean defectors. Welcome to the 9 p.m. edition of Arirang News. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. We begin with the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. agreeing on integrated nuclear deterrence for the peninsula amid North Korea's mounting threats. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon explains what this means.
President Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed the signing of Seoul and Washington's guidelines on nuclear deterrence and operations on the Korean peninsula, opening doors to, quote, conventional nuclear integration between the two countries. This came on Thursday during a bilateral meeting between the two leaders at the sidelines of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C.
Conventional nuclear integration means combining nuclear and conventional weapons. In other words, U.S. nuclear assets and South Korea's advanced conventional strategy will be combined to deter and respond to North Korea's nuclear weapons.
This also indicates that U.S. nuclear assets that can deter North Korea's nuclear threats will be deployed to missions on the Korean peninsula during both peacetime and wartime. Also, South Korea will be involved in decision-making processes of nuclear deterrence operations, whereas before all decisions were made by the U.S. Since the two countries first established the Nuclear Consultative Group last year, 2 rounds of training have already been provided to South Korean personnel for a better understanding of U.S. nuclear operations.
Through the adoption of these joint guidelines, a comprehensive Korea-U.S. integrated deterrence system has been established. This elevates the Korea-U.S. alliance, which has traditionally been based on conventional forces, to a truly nuclear-based alliance.
Further bolstering South Korea's security cooperation with like-minded countries, Yoon also met with the leaders of the United Kingdom, Norway, Poland, and Luxembourg on Thursday before leaving for Seoul. These sideline meetings were part of more than 10 that Yoon squeezed in during his 2-day trip to Washington, D.C. While security was largely a shared theme for the meetings, President Yoon discussed economic cooperation with talking points customized for each nation, such as nuclear energy cooperation with the Czech Republic and Sweden, as well as defense industry cooperation with Germany.
President Yoon emphasized to President Pavel that South Korea possesses the world's best construction capabilities and overwhelming price competitiveness. He stressed that if South Korea is selected as the contractor, it would significantly contribute to the development of the nuclear power sector in the Czech Republic.
Other key industries discussed with European partners were critical minerals and semiconductor production. The top office says that the bilaterals were used to, quote, reinforce the stepping stones for the nation's companies, and it also added that it hopes that these face-to-face opportunities lead to a boost in the nation's economy and ultimately improve the daily living of the people in South Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Beyond his bilateral interactions, the South Korean leader also sought broader cross-regional cooperation within the framework of NATO and its Indo-Pacific partners, as he pledged greater support for Ukraine amid deepening military collaboration between Russia and North Korea. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea will double its non-lethal support for Ukraine and increase its military cooperation with NATO, as President Yoon issues an urgent call to counter Russia and North Korea's military threat to Europe and the Indo-Pacific. On Thursday, the South Korean leader attended the annual NATO summit for the 3rd consecutive year, along with other Indo-Pacific partner countries, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, as the so-called IP4. Speaking at the session for NATO allies and partners, President Yoon said that value-based cooperation between NATO and the Indo-Pacific is an urgent call of the times to uphold global freedom and prosperity after Russia and North Korea last month forged a treaty on military and economic cooperation. According to US officials, Pyongyang has already supplied Moscow with around 11,000 containers of ammunition. Yoon said that it is due to enablers like North Korea that the Ukraine war has been lengthened, and warned that military and economic support from Russia to North Korea would exacerbate security threats to the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region. He stressed the need for overwhelming deterrence and also called for the power of cooperation between the Indo-Pacific and Europe to establish peace in Ukraine and to support its reconstruction efforts. In this regard, Yoon announced South Korea will double its contribution to the NATO-Ukraine Trust Fund in 2025 to $24 million, up from $12 million this year. While Yoon said on Monday that South Korea could provide lethal support to Kyiv depending on the level of Moscow and Pyongyang's military cooperation, the NATO Trust Fund provides non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. South Korea and NATO will also increase information sharing regarding North Korea-made weapons and those used against Ukraine, helping them discuss more elaborate countermeasures to the Russian-North Korea axis. Seoul and Brussels will further ramp up military interoperability through the mutual recognition of airworthiness certification. The South Korean leader and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed these developments as they met on Thursday morning.
NATO's airworthiness certificate officially recognizes the flight safety of South Korea's domestically certified aircraft. South Korea is the first Asian country to sign such an agreement with Brussels. The certification is expected to facilitate aircraft exports and accelerate defense cooperation between the two sides in the aviation sector.
As Yoon gathered with other IP4 leaders, the minilateral group jointly condemned the Russia-North Korea treaty as a grave threat to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and Europe. They also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and offered their united support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Based on their value-based solidarity, the South Korean leader further suggested the IP4 also expand their scope of cooperation to address the global south, maritime security, cybersecurity, non-proliferation and counter-terrorism.
Through participation in the NATO summit, South Korea has enhanced its own security as well as global security cooperation. NATO's focus on the role of IP4, especially South Korea, has been emphasized, and many leaders resonated with President Yoon's remarks, highlighting the need for cooperation with Seoul to strengthen solidarity between the Indo-Pacific region and the Atlantic.
Going forward, with the boundaries blurring between Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security in the face of new complex threats and challenges, Seoul and Washington officials say they hope to institutionalize the cooperation between NATO and IP4 countries, building on their flagship projects on supporting Ukraine, cyber defense and artificial intelligence. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
China criticized strengthened cooperation between the U.S. and IP4 partners, saying it will divide the Asia-Pacific region by igniting competition. The remark came from China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian during a press briefing on Friday when asked about how Beijing views the close partnership between South Korea, Japan and NATO. He insisted that NATO looks to push regional tensions in the Asia-Pacific region and added it should not create another NATO in the region that would disturb peace and unity. The IP4, South Korea, Australia, Japan and New Zealand, pledged to deepen cooperation amid growing military ties between Russia and North Korea. Japan has renewed its false territorial claims over Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island in its annual defense paper, sparking a strong backlash from Seoul. At the same time, Japan called Korea its partner for the first time. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more.
The Japanese government has once again said Dokdo Island is its territory. This year's defense white paper was adopted at a cabinet meeting on Friday, which said Takeshima, the Japanese name for Dokdo, is its own territory, and the issue over the territorial claims remains unresolved. Tokyo has been making such claims in its annual defense paper for 20 years now, since 2005. But at the same time, Tokyo has vowed to strengthen bilateral relations with Seoul. South Korea is described as its partner in Japan's defense white paper for the very first time, and an important neighboring country. In response to Japan's claims over Dokdo, South Korea's defense ministry on Friday called in Yohei Takeda, an officer at the Japanese self-defense forces stationed in Korea. The Defense Ministry's Director of International Policy, Lee Seung-bum, told him that South Korea would respond firmly to any actions aimed at removing territorial rights over Dokdo. He also urged Tokyo to immediately correct its claims. The country's foreign ministry spokesperson also issued a statement on Friday, calling on Japan to immediately withdraw the claims. He expressed deep regret, saying Dokdo is South Korean territory historically and geographically. He added that Japan must realize that its claims over Dokdo do not help in developing bilateral relations in a future-oriented manner. 배은지, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Hawaii, South Korea is looking ahead at a crucial rocket system testing that will make or break a historic weapons deal with the U.S. Our defense correspondent, Choi Min-jung, has details.
South Korea is on the brink of clinching its first ever defense export deal with the U.S. The country's Bigung Pioneer-guided rocket system, developed by defense company LIG Next One in cooperation with the Agency for Defense Development, is scheduled to be test-fired in waters off Hawaii on Friday local time, on the sidelines of the Rim of the Pacific exercise.
This is the last in a series of recent successful tests conducted by the U.S. Defense Department.
The foreign comparative test is aimed to see whether foreign weapons satisfy valid defense requirements for use in the U.S. Success would mark a significant milestone as it would open the door for exports, representing the first time a complete South Korean-made weapon system is integrated into Washington's arsenal.
This will serve as an opportunity for the world to once again recognize the excellence of South Korea's guided weapons.
The Bigung is a 70mm low-cost guided imaging rocket that can be fired from land, sea, and air. It's known for its cost-effectiveness and ability to accurately hit multiple targets at once. U.S. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti, who reportedly has a great interest in the Bigung, visited the South Korean Navy's vessel the Cheonjabong on Thursday to take a closer look at the weapon before the launch. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Hawaii.
The minimum hourly wage in South Korea next year will be over 10,000 won for the first time. But despite this milestone, the size of the increase was the second smallest since the system was introduced. Lee Soo-jin has the details.
South Korea has now entered the era of the 10,000 won minimum hourly wage. The Minimum Wage Commission on Friday voted to set the minimum wage at 10,030 Korean won, or around $7.30 at the current exchange rate. For someone who works 40 hours a week, this brings the monthly minimum pay to around 2.09 million won. It is an increase of 1.7% from this year's minimum hourly wage of 9,860 won. While this is the first time since the minimum wage was first introduced in 1988 that it has entered the 10,000 won range, the rise is actually the second smallest after the 1.5% increase in 2021. The decision was made by the Minimum Wage Commission, consisting of representatives from businesses, labor, and the general public in 53 days, almost half of the time that it took last year when negotiations took a record 110 days. But the new wage plan was not agreed upon unanimously, as in its final proposal, the labor side suggested 10,121 and the business side 10,031. The proposal from the business side won, with 14 votes to the labor side's 9. As many as 3 million people are expected to be impacted by this decision next year, according to the Labor Ministry. From the labor side, the Federation of Korean Trade Unions expressed its dissatisfaction over the decision, and the business side is also expected to express concern about the ability of small business owners to pay their employees the higher wages. The new wage plan will be submitted by the Minimum Wage Commission to the Labor Ministry, which is expected to confirm it by August 5th. While both sides are able to request a re-evaluation by the Commission to the Labor Ministry, such a request has never been approved before, making it highly likely that the Commission's decision will go into effect from January 1st next year. 이수진, Arirang News.
Korea's economy is rebounding amid stellar exports and slower inflation. Seoul's finance ministry shared this latest assessment in its Green Book for July, released on Friday. The book shows exports in June jumped over 5% on-year, with shipments of semiconductors surging 52%. Consumer prices in June also posted a slower gain on month at 2.4%, closer to the government's target range of 2%. Relevant authorities have pledged to closely monitor external risk factors to better cope with their potential repercussions. On the K-pop front, girl group NewJeans is celebrating a fifth album with sales above 1 million. According to the group's agency Adore, the group's latest single album Supernatural surpassed 1 million in sales between its release on June 21st and June 30th. Supernatural also marks the group's debut in Japan and features tracks designed to resonate with fans there. Since their debut in July 2022, all 5 records released by members of NewJeans have sold over 1 million digital and physical copies for a total of over 7.5 million units. This Sunday, July 14th, South Korea will mark its inaugural North Korean Defectors Day, a national memorial day established by the government. The goal is to raise awareness and foster inclusivity for North Korean defectors. But long before this official recognition, there are some people who have worked hard to share their stories. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin reports.
The play 10th Spring follows 10 years of Hyun Soo-jung's life in South Korea after defecting from North Korea. Adjusting to a new home isn't easy. But with determination, Soo-jung graduates from university and lands a stable job. The play's director, Oh Jin-ha, is a North Korean defector himself, escaping the regime more than 20 years ago.
I feel that when people hear about North Korean defectors, they think, oh, how unfortunate for them. It's always their story. Through this play, I wanted to change that narrative.
10th Spring is a collaboration between a North Korean director and South Korean actors.
We had about 3 weeks to discuss and share real stories about North Korea before our table reading. This helped me understand the struggles, criticism, and misunderstandings North Korean defectors face. I learned a lot more about their lives than just historical facts.
Unfortunately, not all North Korean artists and performers have the opportunity to pursue their careers like director Oh has.
Many North Korean artists stopped their creative activities after coming to the South due to economic challenges. We tried to serving North Korean artists 2 years ago, but it was difficult because not many were continuing their careers here.
This highlights the urgent need for government-led support.
We need to create an environment where these artists can freely pursue their artistic dreams. We will reach out to more North Korean defectors who are artists to help them connect with others in their field and understand the support they need.
This will give these artists more opportunities to pursue their passions and share their talents. The 10th Spring will be performed 2 more times this year at the Uniculture Center in Seoul's Gangseok-gu district on September 21st and December 7th. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
Of all the North Korean defectors coming to South Korea, around 15% are reportedly children and adolescents. Some of them have no family at all, but here there is a man who considers it his fate to care for them. Choi Soo-young delivers us the story.
Kim Tae-hoon has looked after 26 boys. His life, which was quite ordinary after graduating from art school, changed dramatically due to one unexpected night at Hanawan, the settlement support center for North Korean defectors.
It all started as a volunteer activity. I met a child at Hanawan who was left alone. The child asked if I could stay the night, and I thought, why not? So I stayed. It's been 20 years from that night.
For the past 20 years in the group home, Kim has looked after children who defected without any family. There are 8 group homes across the country, but Kim's is the only one operated by an individual. Currently, 8 boys aged from elementary school to their early 20s live with Kim, and for them, he is more than a parent.
He changed my destiny. If I hadn't met him, I don't know how my life would have turned out. He's my parent and the pillar of our home.
Some people think of the group home like a dormitory, but I've never thought of it that way. To me, it always felt like a home with just a lot of children.
Kim-sung, currently in his last year of high school, and Tong-yong, a sociology student, both desire to give back to South Korean society just as their Uncle Kim did for them.
Since I received so much from my uncle, I want to give back to others as much as I can.
We talked a lot about what I love, what I am good at even if I'm not perfect at it. He helped me approach life that way.
Kim Tae-hoon is unmarried and is about to turn 50. He has never regretted his choice to look after the children who defected from the north.
I have never wanted to quit, yet I've been worried about how long I can handle living with the boys. But even if given another chance, I wouldn't change a thing. Living with the boys has been incredibly fun, though also very challenging. I've learned so much from them.
Most of Kim's charges have graduated from college and are now living stable and healthy lives as a nurse, employees at major companies and international volunteers. Some have moved from Seoul to the countryside to start new lives. Just 5 kilometers away from the DMZ in Cheon-gangwon province, where you can see North Korea, a few children from the community are together running the northernmost brunch cafe. Won-il and Jin-bum, living in this community since 2016, have settled in Cheolwon near the North Korean border and opened a cafe called Open the Moon.
The name Open the Moon means opening the doors of closed hearts, embracing different cultures, and opening the door to reunification of South and North Korea.
Jin-bum grew up alone when he was in the north, but is now part of a large family, working as a barista and a farmer. He tends to a small garden behind the cafe and finds happiness in his daily work.
I lived alone as far as I can remember and didn't know what a family was. But after meeting my uncle and brothers, I finally have a family. In the north, I never had my own field to farm. I always worked on others' land, so I dreamed of cultivating my own field someday.
The cafe has become a popular spot for visitors from all over the country.
The air is great, and the atmosphere here is wonderful. But it's heartbreaking to see North Korea so close but unreachable.
After opening the cafe, Won-il has even bigger dreams.
I plan to organize a unification peace camp where people of all ages can participate, because I want to do something meaningful starting here in Cheolwon.
Kim says he hopes his children can live confidently in Korean society.
What I'm most proud of is that our boys have no shadows on their faces. Despite the heartbreaking past they had to endure, they have bright smiles and faces now, and I'm thankful for that. I hope they continue to dream confidently and live well.
The boys might have come to South Korea alone, but they are achieving their dreams as a family. Jeju, Arirang News.
The scorching heat continues throughout the day today. Currently, heat wave warnings are in place in the Seoul metropolitan area, the inland areas of Gangwon-do province, and the Chungcheong-do provinces, Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Tomorrow, with only showers passing over inland areas, the daytime temperature in Seoul will soar up to 33 degrees Celsius. Unlike the inland areas, Jeju Island and the southern coast are expected to receive heavy rain from the weekend. Jeju Island will receive up to 150 millimeters of rain, and the southern coast will receive more than 100 until Sunday. The concentration period is expected to be between tomorrow night and Sunday. Tomorrow's Seoul will start off at 24 degrees Celsius. It will move up to 33 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gwangju and Jeju, 29 degrees. There will be another monsoon rain across the country again next Tuesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. that's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back on Monday, 9 a.m. Korea time.